Squire of Hell. By Troy Maverick. Chapter 29. The last artifact came with a hefty price. Images of my sister continued to run through my head, pictures of her death numbing me. I wasn't so bothered by the fact that I'd nearly died back there. I've had close encounters before defending the streets of Ebonmere, even if they weren't as dire as a few minutes ago. Still, I couldn't let Gez deter me from my main mission, which was to protect Onessa. Nerves ran high. We were cutting it extremely close. By the time Pochi flew over Bido, we had only minutes to spare. The rest of my party went frantic, while I had silence tuned inside my head. I needed to focus, and I couldn't let anything distract me from the mission, no matter how unsure Maylise was about making it on time.
Sarian, we are nearly spent on time.
There's no way we are going to drop on Lord Curran's court, fight off his goons, chuck the artifacts inside, and dash in to rescue our goddess in time.
Maylise pressed on. I made a few calculations in my head, and submitted to the idea before I spoke it aloud. No, we are not. Which is why we need a diversion. And we are going to need all hands on deck for it to work.
Well, if you have an idea, let's hear it.
Faye said. The resistance to Pochi's hardening is strong, right? Strong enough to withstand a fall from this height. We need him to create a distraction while we trigger the spell. So the plan is to have Pochi drop in on the action below, while we set up shop at a further distance.
And how do you expect us to land? In pieces?
Faye smart-mouthed. I grinned. No, with Emera. Everyone looked over to me like I was nuts. Emera, can you grow fast enough to sustain the fall?
Of course. I'd have to grow at my max height, a titan size, which is 13 meters high.
Perfect. Faye will summon her light shield, and Emera will drag us off of Pochi while we are in it. When she triggers her growth, we should still be in her hands, and her impact from her hooves landing on the ground shouldn't bother us. By the time Pochi lands, the defenses around the castle should have already made their way toward the court, clearing the way for Emera's landing. The idea is to summon as many men as we can toward the execution site, which is in the center courtyard of Greed's home, according to Pothley. Once everyone is in the same vicinity, within that 2-mile radius, we toss the spell inside, rendering the perimeter with immobility. Maylise and Emera will take care of any loose soldiers outside of that range, if they should make it that far. And after I infiltrate the castle and recover Onessa, Emera will recover Pochi, me, and herself, bringing us home.
We can do all of that in under 10 minutes?
This is a wild shot plan, Sarian.
Maylise cried.
But I like it.
It's suicidal, is what it is.
Faye hissed.
We don't have a choice. I say let's go for it.
Emera followed, excitement pouring off her smile. How about it, Pochi? You think you can do it? I asked our companion, and he purred softly.
Are you honestly planning on going inside there alone?
Faye asked me. Yeah. The entire court will be frozen. I shouldn't have a problem taking Onessa back. And if anything, Emera is my backup.
Let me go with you.
Faye volunteered. No, you are needed with Maylise and Emera.
Assuming this plan of yours works, they won't need me. I can be more useful with you.
Call it planning for uncertainty. I agree, Sarian. Use our white mage.
Uncertainty. I didn't like the sound of that. I guess there was always a possibility that the spell may not work as intended. Or even someone being immune to it. I didn't argue about it, and agreed for her to tag along, despite me being skeptical about both recovering Onessa and potentially protecting Faye and Onessa. All right. I looked over my shoulder, our time to jump coming up. Pochi, get ready to make some noise. Be careful out there.
For the record, I am still against this plan.
Faye protested, then encased me, Maylise and herself inside her golden bubble.
This is the craziest trick I've ever done in all of my years.
Emera said, and while she hugged Faye's bubble, she dropped back first off of Pochi. It felt like skydiving without a parachute. While Maylise screamed remarks of joy, Faye screamed threats against me. On her defense, it wasn't the greatest plan, but it was the best we had with little risk. At one point, we all saw Emera disappear in the clouds, and my stomach tanked, thinking that she'd lost her grip. But after a second, I heard the sound of thunder crashing, followed by the dome being temporarily covered in black. It was Emera's grip on the orb, but the longer I looked up at the giant Minot aura from above, the more the color of the light shield began to fade. I turned my head to Faye, who was fighting to keep awake. Faye! I shouted, and rushed to her. Maylise followed my lead, but Faye insisted that she was fine.
I'm all right.
We need you to focus and keep the shield up, I encouraged her.
You've done this before, with more people. Not to mention, with a full-grown wyvern, too. You can do this.
Meilai's cheered. Yeah, but the elevation was lower, I said. Hey, close your eyes, breathe long and deep breaths. It'll help. Faye curled up against my chest and did as I instructed her. The color around the orb began to brighten again, and right on time, too. We all heard a thud at a distance, Pochi finally making his landing. I looked down and we still had a few meters to cover, which was perfect. I reached into my pouch and picked up the artifacts, recalling the incantation in my head. As soon as Amara landed, Faye's ball vanished, and we were officially in Baido country. We descended from the palm of her hand after she lined it with the terrain. I didn't get much time to appreciate the talent of my giant woman casting her shadow over us, but by the look on Meilai's face, she was just as impressed as I was. Or maybe jealous.
Just when minotaurs were naturally strong as it is, fate just tosses this one a unique titan trait. Hey, don't let this size of yours get over your head, you got that? You still got, whoa.
Meilai's gasped, taking a peek at under her drape as she stood between two red furred hooves.
Amara is going commando.
I couldn't help but laugh.
Don't spread lies.
Amara hissed back at her. No, just your legs. I whispered.
What was that, Butcher?
Faye asked me over my shoulder. Nothing. Come on. We need to get closer to Amara. I'm not sure how wide this safe bubble is.
I'm sure you'd enjoy that.
Faye said cheekily, crossing her arms under her breasts. We were doing well with time, especially after taking this plan's route. Now, all we had to worry about was the 10 minutes where everything would be frozen. I saw soldiers starting to branch out from running toward Pochi, more interested with the giant blocking their moonlight. I hurried up, and squeezed the artifacts in my hand, then chanted, Ajanuka Beska Naganu. The crystal gems fused, and a faint white ring circled our feet. The arrows from the enemy were lined up to attack Amara. Too bad for them, I was a pretty good thrower, especially when I revved up my right arm. Once the fused artifacts landed, the spell swept the area. Just like Pothsley had said. I expected 2 miles all around, and to my surprise, it had worked. A thin film of light stretched along the horizon. All of that hollering from the soldiers stopped, and even the air did, too, causing the arrows to halt a few feet before the unfazed Amara.
Are you sure you don't want us going with you, Sarian?
She asked. Actually, all of us going can help us save time. By the looks of it, the barrier seems quiet. We have 2 miles to work with. The further the both of you are from our target, the more our enemies outside that range can see you.
Then let's go.
Meilai's cheered, leaping on the fur along Amara's ankles like she was a joyride.
Are you nuts? The rumble off her step could make you slip off.
Faye cried.
And then her tail will follow up and sweep you. Don't be a daredevil.
I'm a big girl. I can handle it.
She said with a mischievous grin. I chuckled. Perverted is what you are.
I have no shame. This could be a one-time opportunity.
Faye and I took higher ground on Amara's hand. In a few paces forward, we made it to the heart of Zurgaven, Baido. Greed making Onessa's execution outside in public was a blessing. We didn't have to navigate underground and melt our minutes away. In fact, as soon as we reached the central courtyard, she was there, kneeling on the altar, with her arms bound in glowing cuffs behind her back.
Our goddess.
Meilai's cried, and then leaped off of Amara, dashing to Onessa on her fours. For a goddess, she looked so fragile. She was thin, with pallor on her face, and her eyes sullen and heavy. Her black hair under her long horns ran greasy down her face, the dingy tunic she had on torn and bloody. And standing right next to her with a machete was a blonde guy about my height, in a white suit, ready to decapitate her.
If she wanted to, Onessa could enslave this entire audience before the altar with lust.
Amara said.
But those chains and cuffs around her wrist are mega rare, ancient relics which have been recovered and stolen by our forgotten demon king Lucifer. They drained not only mana, but Sin God's special abilities. So she couldn't turn the tables on Greed and make his people fall in love with her.
That man standing next to her is her brother, Greed.
Yes, Lord Curran himself.
Then I say we take the opportunity to smite him where he stands.
Faye said, prepared to summon her powers against him.
Not only will your only defense, Divine Blast, not leave a scratch on him, it will disrupt the curse and make him live again,
Amara warned, and Meilai's turned back to listen. By the looks of it, Meilai's and Faye had the same idea. Meilai's lowered her bow and arrow, and instead, stood there on the altar, glaring at Greed. His selfish smile was picture perfect, bearing his fangs and his callousness. Amara leveled her hand with the altar, allowing Faye and I to dismount. I could see why Lithenians hated this man by just looking at him. Though, I wasn't expecting Greed and Lust to look so very human. Meilais gave him a few choice words, while I tried to unshackle Onessa from these mana restrainers. Shit, this thing won't budge. We need the key.
You mean, this one?
Faye said, standing right next to Greed's frozen state as she held the key she'd stolen from his pocket. Faye. Get out of there. I retorted.
I can't believe you touched him,
Meilais whispered.
He is powerless, right? What's there to fear?
He is the very bane of my existence.
Meilais blurted, her voice cracked.
If he wanted to, he could wipe us all out with the snap of his finger.
You're giving the man too much credit.
Amara said.
But, we should leave.
She took a huge step over the crowd for Pochi, who was still encased in his crystal shell. Meanwhile, I unlocked Onessa from the mega rare metal cuffs, the glowing gradually fading once her wrists were free. I had no intentions of keeping the special item with Greed, so I stuffed it in my bag along with the key, while Faye and Meilais helped our goddess up. Amara came back carrying Pochi on her shoulder. She leaned over and offered her hand, Meilais and Faye hitchhiking on her as well. As for me, I glared Greed down, and made him a promise. Because the next time we met, I was going to have his head for this.